Hey everyone, today we are going deep. We're looking at the invisible chemical forces that are constantly shaping who we are and what we do, our hormones. We're going to explore this incredible connection between our chemistry, our stress, our choices, and believe it or not, even the way we stand. It's a wild story about science, confidence, and a huge controversy that shows just how tangled up our minds and bodies really are. So let's just start with the central question, the one that kicked this whole thing off. Is it possible that by just striking a pose for a couple of minutes, you can actually change your body's internal chemistry? It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But this very question launched a massive scientific phenomenon. And to even begin to answer it, we first need to meet the two main characters in this drama. First up, we've got cortisol. The easiest way to think about cortisol is as your body's own internal alarm system. When you're facing down a threat, or even just a really high-pressure meeting, your body pumps out cortisol. Its job is basically to get you ready for action, the classic fight-or-flight response, by flooding your system with energy. It's absolutely essential for survival, but as you're about to see, how it affects us is anything but straightforward. And then there's our second key player, testosterone. Now yeah, it's known as the main male sex hormone, but everybody's got it. And for our story, we're really interested in its role as the status hormone. It's the one that's tied to feeling powerful, being assertive, taking risks, and basically our drive to climb the social ladder. So keep these two in mind, cortisol and testosterone, because they are right at the heart of everything we're talking about today. All right, so we have the stress hormone and the status hormone. But how do they actually play out in the real world? Well, in this first section, we're going to see that their influence is way more complex and, frankly, way more personal than you might think.
You know, there's this common idea that stress is, well, stress. That when something stressful happens, all of our bodies kind of react in the same predictable way. Cortisol goes up, we feel anxious, the end. But the science, it tells a much more interesting story.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. Cortisol doesn't just hit everyone the same way. Its effect actually seems to depend on your personality. Take this 2016 study. Researchers found that for men who really need certainty, people who like clear black and white answers, a spike in cortisol made them more likely to think in an ends justify the means kind of way. But for guys who are more cool with ambiguity, more cortisol actually made them stick more to the moral rules. That's wild. The exact same hormone pushed different people in opposite directions. And the plot thickens. A 2017 study found some really interesting differences between men and women's hormonal responses to stress. After a stressful activity, men's cortisol levels basically stayed the same, but women's actually went down. And look at testosterone. It went up in men, but didn't budge for women. Now, what does this suggest? Maybe that the men were gearing up for a more competitive, task-focused response.
And there's one more crucial layer to peel back here. It wasn't just about biological sex. That same study found that no matter who you were, your self-esteem played a huge role in your brain's reaction. People with lower self-esteem, their brains had to work harder. They showed more activity in the parts of the brain that handle managing emotions and thinking about yourself. It's like they were putting in more mental overtime to cope with the stress. So the big takeaway here is that our stress response is this custom-built thing, shaped by our personality, our sex, and how we see ourselves. Okay, so with all that complexity in mind, let's dive into the main event, the story of power posing. This was an idea that took all these complicated links between hormones and behavior and distilled them into one of the simplest, most seductive life hacks you could ever imagine. The whole thing exploded into popular culture back in 2010 with this incredible promise. Researchers published a paper suggesting that people could literally fake it till they make it, that by just changing your body, you could change your mind, your hormones, and basically your destiny. And the proposed recipe for this was so incredibly simple. Step 1, just stand in a big, expansive, high-power pose. Think Wonder Woman for 2 minutes. That's it. Step 2, this physical act would trigger a biological domino effect. Your testosterone, the status hormone, would rise. Your cortisol, the stress hormone, would fall. And then step 3, this new hormonal cocktail would make you act more confident and even take bigger risks. It was a powerfully simple idea and people absolutely loved it. But as you may have guessed, the story didn't end there. What started as this celebrated, feel-good finding quickly spiraled into a massive scientific controversy, and it all hinges on one of the most important parts of the scientific method. Because see, science at its best is a self-correcting machine. It's designed to question everything, even its own findings. So it did what it's supposed to do. It went back to check its work, and that key step is called replication. Can other scientists get the same results if they run the experiment again?
And this timeline really tells the whole story. 2010, the original study comes out. 2012, one of the authors, Amy Cuddy, gives a TED Talk that goes insanely viral, becoming one of the most watched talks ever. Power posing is a global phenomenon. But then, 2015, the first big attempt to replicate the study comes out, and they can't find the hormonal effects. Then, in 2016, the bombshell. Dana Carney, the lead author of that original 2010 paper, publicly announces that she no longer believes the effect is real.
So let's just put it side by side. The promise versus the reality. The original claim was this beautiful, clean story. Posing makes your testosterone go up and your cortisol go down. But the reality, after tons of follow-up studies and larger analyses, there was just no reliable, repeatable effect on people's hormone levels or on their actual behavior, like taking risks. And really, this quote from Dana Carney, the original lead author, says it all. In 2016, she wrote, "I do not believe that power pose effects are real." She went on to say that the evidence against the idea was, in her words, undeniable. That is a huge and very rare moment of a scientist publicly reevaluating their own famous work.
So, is that it? Is power posing just fake news? Well, not exactly. The story isn't quite over. In this last section, let's look at what we can actually take away from this whole saga, because it tells us something really profound about the games our minds can play with our bodies. So, what's the real lesson here? Well, first, it's that hormones are complicated. They're influencers, not simple on-off switches. Second, and this part is key, even if the biology didn't change, many studies did find that holding a power pose could make people feel more powerful. The hormonal shift might have been a ghost, but the feeling was real for a lot of people, which suggests the effect is psychological, not physiological. It's also a great reminder to be a little skeptical of overly simple life hacks. And finally, this doesn't mean the mind-body connection isn't real. Of course it is. It just means it's a messy, two-way street, not a simple one-way command.
And that leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. The story of power posing showed us that the biological engine behind the idea wasn't what we thought. But it also showed that our brains can create the feeling of power all by themselves, just from a change in posture. So if our minds can do that, if they can generate that feeling of confidence internally, without even needing a hormonal push, it really makes you wonder, right? What else are they capable of?